Hello, welcome to the Infinite Path. Today we are going to be responding to Kalam EL's claims about Muhammad being a Christian stolen legacy and being an Abyssinian apostle. Kalam makes a lot of claims in this video about who he believes to be um, the real Muhammad, which he claims to be an Abyssinian apostle who was really a Christian. Um, in this video, I'm going to be going through his claims and then laying out the evidence that we have, and then also using some of the scholars that he quotes and sources that he used actually don't even agree with his opinion fully at all. In this video, I'm going to be very respectful in this video. I only want to actually go through the evidence that we know. So without further ado, let's get into some of the claims that he makes in this video.
We're talking right now about the 6th century. I always have to separate things for people and in a nice clear imagery fashion so you guys can understand where I'm from and talking about. So I'm talking about the 6th century here on the left-hand side, I guess it will be left-hand side, depending on how it shows on the camera. You will see over there from 500 AD to 560 AD. This is the time period that I'm talking about or discussing right here, the 6th century. Okay, then over in the middle you have the traditional dating of Muhammad of Islam. Okay, as you can see there from 670 to 632. When I'm discussing Muhammad, okay, because everybody likes this, the Prophet Muhammad, the Apostle Muhammad, etc., etc. It's like everybody's just familiar with the middle one right here.
So he's doing a couple of things here that we're going to get into later in my presentation about the apostle of Arabia, and he gets he conflates a lot of things, but we're going to keep going here.
Yeah, that's all they're familiar with. This figure. I'm telling you that there was a figure that predated, was anteceded, right, by a 6th century Abyssinian one.
All right, so that is mostly his claim, is that the 7th century Muhammad is really a 6th century Abyssinian Christian. And the Muslims of the Arabs of the Hijaz area and the 7th century Muhammad, which he's talking about here, stole that Muhammad's legacy and what that Muhammad was really actually talking about. And we're going to get into it, but let's get to what he uses as his evidence first.
Okay, that is the one that I am discussing with you guys, and I want you guys to take the middle one. Let me just put this over here. There you go. Yeah, Christian. Let me just put this over here. There you go. No.
All right. So this right here is a Sabaic inscription, okay? And this comes from Christian Robin, and the source he has right here. The Judaism of the ancient kingdom of Himyar in Arabia. Kalam goes on to state that this is a Christian god, and we know this because they use Rahmanan and then they use the praised one, which is Mahmud or Muhammad. They don't know because they don't know the vocalization of these names, and they could differ. They don't know because they don't have the markings to really tell how it was vocalized, so they don't know which way it was pronounced. But either way, this is where you find this epigraph of Muhammad. Now let's listen to Kalam's claim that this comes from two communes and that this is about a Christian God. And then I'll actually give you what Christian Robin actually says about this inscription, who it was by, what it was about, um, and we'll dive further into it. Okay. All right. Let's take a listen here.
Let me do this. I do like that. Most people don't know, right, that Muhammad in the 6th century, guess what? It was a South Arabian / Abyssinian name for God. They had two names. Christians had two names for God. They either had the name Rahman or Rahmanun and the name Mahmud or Muhammad. Those were the two names for their deity. Pause for a second.
We are going to pause for a second. Now let's take this off the screen and let's bring this up here. So what are the Sabaic inscriptions? All right. So the Sabaic inscription Ja 1028, dated to 523 CE, found in Najran. This was written during the reign of King Yusuf Duhu Nuwas, a Jewish king of Himyar, who was fighting against Abyssinian Axumite Christians. Kalam EL's claim, this refers to a physical person named Muhammad living in Abyssinia. He's going to make this claim later. He hasn't made it yet, but he's going to make this claim later. Next slide. The two communes. Robin identifies the two communes as a distinct and hostile. One was Hagarite Jewish, local Himyarites, and the other was Christian, allied with Abyssinian. Hostility, not unity. These two groups were at war. King Yusuf Duhunuwas wrote the inscriptions Kalam El cites after he had besieged and slaughtered the Christian commune in Najran. The inscription logic. If Muhammad was a leader of the Abyssinian Christians or a deity of the Christians, King Yusuf would have never used that name in his victory inscription unless it was a title for a Jewish god, Rahmanan. Robin explains that Mahmud is a formula of praise for the deity, not a proper noun for a human. The term Mahmud in these texts is an epithet objective of the god Rahmanan. It signifies the praised one or the glorified. It appears as a verbal noun, not as a name of an individual. All right, let's keep going. The two communes, because he's going to bring it up later in this video. I'm going to keep playing. He's going to say this is proof of two communes. All right. Let's read. This is from one of the PDFs. This is from the same book that that we have over here, The Judaism of Ancient Kingdom of Himyar and Arabia, by Christian Robin. It's just from a little bit further up from where he's taking his information for Mahmud being the name of the deity, and it seems identical to that of Islam's prophet. This is just higher up in that same book, and this is by Christian Robin himself. The blessing in the introduction associates God Rahmanan, who is in the sky, with Israel and the Lord of the Jews, two divine entities and Israel. It is legitimate to ask whether one finds here an instance of deviance. Has nothing to look at this. Deviance denounced by the rabbis. The one that states there are two powers in heaven. This blessing is therefore a call to question the relationship between the Rahmanan and the Lord of the Jews, who is found in two other invocations. Lord of the Jews with the praised one. Lord of the Jews with Rahmanan. One should first of all notice that the author of these three texts used the title Lord of the Jews, written, Rab, Rab, I don't know the pronunciations of these, but you can go look at them, are proven or plausible Himyarites. So who are the Himyarites? The Himyarites are Jews, okay? Robin identifies that the author of as proven or plausible Himyarites, locals, not Abyssinians. The two powers concept is known as a deviation in ancient Judaism, not a stolen legacy from Ethiopian Abyssinians. Okay, and what is the Book of the Himyarites? So the Book of the Himyarites, he's gonna bring up later. Oh, well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's stop here and let's go back to his video and see what else he claims here.
Really let that settle into your heads, right? I really want you lot to settle that into your heads. Because again, most people don't know history. And I will keep on saying it. Most people are historically ignorant. And guess what? They're racially prejudiced because they don't want to learn about what was Ethiopia doing in Arabia in the turn of the 6th century. Nobody wants to teach you this. I look through and I'm looking through academia. Academia on a whole, in terms of Islamic studies, don't want to teach you about this.
So I'm going to skip forward here to see
here anything that ties them with Islam or ties them with Muhammad, okay, or ties them with the Quran. They don't want to do that. It's religious hatred. They do not want to hear anything that ties them with Islam. And it's like, hold on. But I read history. I read the historical sources. They will tell you that the Ethiopian empire, Aksumite Empire, was larger than both the Byzantine and the Sassanid Empire. So why are you only focusing on these two? Obviously, racism's still alive, but they're just concealing it, right? So there's racial prejudice. And again, my Christian don't want to hear this information. What? Muhammad was the name for our Christian God?
False. As we already stated, King Yusuf was a Jewish king of Himyar who was fighting against Abyssinian Aksumite Christians. So he is correct, Kalam is correct in saying that there were Abyssinian Christians living in Nazaran. But this inscription is a victory inscription for King Yusuf, a Jewish king of Himyar. Okay, so I don't understand how we've gotten to this is Christian God when in the book, in the source that he states that he's reading and the sources that he claims that he's reading, it literally states that King Yusuf, the one who had this inscription written, is a Jewish king. He's not Christian at all. He actually, so this inscription is actually a victory inscription because he goes to Nazaran and he slaughters hundreds of Christians. And then Kalam comes later in this same video and cites a woman named Muhammad from the book of the Himyarites who was a Christian. So this is the one of the claims that he is correct in. There was a woman named Muhammad who was a Christian who was slaughtered by King Yusuf, but that's one out of 200 names in the book of the Himyarites. So one out of 200. So you have a linguistic outlier out of 200 names. You have one name, and all of a sudden, this is just such a popular movement in that time that, everybody's name was Muhammad. But we're going to keep going into this step by step. Here we are. So the book of the Himyarites, this is what I was talking about earlier. So later in Kalam's video, he brings up the fact that there is this name here, Muhammad or Muhammad. Again, they don't know the pronunciation because they just don't know those things. They only have the root of the word, okay? So you can find this in the book of the Himyarites, fragments of retro. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's a Syriac work. What is it? It's a sixth century historical document preserved in a Syriac manuscript that provides a detailed account of the persecution of Christians in South Arabia, modern day Yemen. The Book of the Himyarites or Himyarite, I don't know, and the Martyrium of Arethusa are the other side of the story. They are written by Christians in Syriac and Greek to mourn the people King Yusuf killed. So again, this inscription was not written by the Jewish king, but it was the Jewish king had this written on his behalf. And this is after he slaughtered all these Christians. Who This woman here is a martyr that's named in this book of the Hemorites, which is a Christian book that commemorates the martyrdom of hundreds of Christians by this Jewish king Yusuf, who Kalam claims whose inscription Kalam claims is a Christian inscription about a Christian God, which is completely false. So we're going to keep going though. So what the book says, it describes the martyrs of Najran. Like I said, the people of Najran were the Christians, the people of Hemyar were the Jews. Women like Muhammada or Muhammada, they don't know, as victims who refused to convert to Judaism. The role of the Abyssinians. The book portrays the Abyssinians, the Axumites, as the good guys who eventually invaded Yemen in 520 CE to stop the Jewish king and avenge the Christian deaths. A 1 in 20 occurrence to define an entire movement. This is a classic statistical outlier fallacy. So, like I said, the this inscription, this Sabaic inscription, has absolutely nothing to do with Christianity and everything to do with Judaism. Nothing to do with Christianity at all. Everything to do with Judaism. This does have something to do with Christianity, but it's two completely different things. One is a name and one is a title. So I don't really understand how he got to the fact that, that was a Christian God's name. That really kind of blows my mind. Maybe he can expand on that and, maybe revise what he meant by that. I don't know. It's just weird that, and you can even go to Christian Robin himself, literally right here. This is quote, they're proven Hemorites. The description is it's definitely about the Hemorites, which are the Jews. And it's definitely a victory inscription when they slaughtered the hundreds of Christians that were living in Najran, which is another source that he uses to prove my point that the Sabaic inscription, has nothing to do with Christianity. It has everything to do with Judaism. This is its own thing. It has everything to do with Christianity. Two completely different things. And this is not a title of a deity. This woman right here is not a title. This is literally the name of somebody who's martyred. So you can't even make that argument that, well, yeah, it was the name of a deity. No, it wasn't. It was the name of a person. So those two inscriptions have nothing to do with each other. I mean, those two names have nothing to do with each other. The inscription and this name have absolutely nothing to do with each other. They're completely two different communities, and they both didn't like each other. So there's something else going on there. It's not what Kalam's claiming that happened. All right, so let's take this down and let me actually see where we're going to go next in this video. Some of the claims that he makes. I love how he's just like hammering this point that this is about Christians when this inscription is about a Jewish king who just slaughtered Christians. Like, that's insane. He goes into it for a while. I would advise you to maybe go relearn this because what you're saying and what you told people is completely false. What? No, that's not true. Like, I don't even understand how let's just go on to the next thing. Um, all right, so this, let's go here because this is actually the next slide that I have in my presentation. So,
The Hijra. It says here, the following two expeditions of Abraha al-Ashram al-Yamani against Mecca. The first one was headed by Abu Yaqsim in order to destroy the Kaaba and establish the elephant as the object of worship. Now, what's interesting here is this Abyssinian Christian was trying to make the elephant an object of worship.
this is like absolutely like a grotesque take on history. I'm gonna read the entire passage. You can find this in Ibn Asaq, Sirat Rasulullah, page 26. Kalam asks, why would a Christian king name a elephant Mahmud, and then why would he then take that elephant and try to destroy the Kaaba to then make the elephant's name the object of worship? That's the claim that he makes basically. But he ignores the fact that the very inscriptions he incited earlier prove that the name was a sacred title for God among the Jews of Yemen decades before Abraha's elephant ever set foot in Arabia. He's taking a 9th century story about an elephant and using it to override 6th century archaeological facts. So he's saying he's looking at archaeology and then but he's taking a 9th century story. This story was written in the 9th century. This source where this the story comes from, the source that he's using, and he's trying to make a 6th century Jewish God really all about Christians, and that's just this. It's not true, and this is why I'm making this video to refute his claims and really lay out the history and the sources and what the sources actually say, because he's creating a narrative that doesn't really exist. So let's read it. Abdul Muttalib then let go of the knocker of the door of the Kaaba and went off with his courageous companions to the mountaintops, where they took up defense positions, waiting to see what Abraha would do when he occupied Mecca. In the morning, Abraha prepared to enter the town and made his elephant ready for battle and drew up his troops. His intention was to destroy the temple and return to Yemen. When they made the elephant its name Mahmud face Mecca, Nufail B. Habib came up to its flank and taking hold of its ear said, "Kneel, Mahmud, or go straight back whence you came, for you are in God's holy land." He let go of his ear and the elephant knelt, and Nufail made off at top speed for the top of the mountain. The troops beat the elephant to make it get up, but it would not. They beat its head with iron bars. They stuck hookings to its underbelly and scartified it, but it would not get up. Then they made it face Yemen, and it immediately got up and started off. When they sent it towards the north and the east, it did likewise. But as soon as they faced towards Mecca, it knelt down. So Kalam is making a huge claim here that this king Ibrahim really sent this elephant up there to destroy the Kaaba, to make the elephant's name the name of worship, and it's not true, because we're gonna get into, like, we'll get more and more in depth into this, but I just like want you guys to try to follow this as best we can, because it kind of goes all over the place and it doesn't follow logically. So basically, this whole story is about Abraha, who was the king of, or I don't know if he's the king. He was mostly the viceroy, and he was placed in charge, and he was Christian, and his job was to, basically convert Jews to Christians. But we're gonna get more into that later on. So let's keep going with these slides here. All right. Yep. Let's go back to Kalam's claim here, and then we'll keep going. No, brother, you've muddled things up. like, like we are so off the beaten path that it's not even like close. But let's go on to another point that he makes. All right. Okay. So this is the thing that I brought up earlier.
So let's keep on going.
There
Again,
we go.
if you go into the book of the Himyarites, again, this is again in the 6th century, you see that in South Arabia, in Najran, one of the females that were actually martyred, her name was also called Mahmida. Okay, so we can find all throughout South Arabia Christians. Okay,
This is the first Christian with the name Mahmuda, and literally the first person that he's mentioned in this video. The other one was an animal. Okay, and the inscription that he cited earlier wasn't even Christian at all. It was completely Jewish, and it was a victory inscription about the guy killing these Christians here.
basically having this name. Okay, Christians having this name. And when I tell you that Muhammad is actually a Christian name, I don't want you lot to believe me. I actually want you lot to go.
I don't. We don't. And you should take his advice, and you should go look up these sources, and you should go do this research yourself, because this is not true.
It's the most Christian name of the 6th century. They don't even hide it.
It's not the most Christian name of the 6th century. That's not true. I would like to see his sources on that. All right. So yeah. So this is actually my next slide here. Let's listen to his claim, and then I'll go into my presentation and what I found about this.
They have a whole chapter talking about those who were named Muhammad before the Muhammad of Islam. One of these is called from the Banu Tamim, which is another Christian tribe. It says here there was Muhammad ibn Sufyan ibn Mujashi. He was an uskuf. They've got here brackets monk, but the actual word here is bishop. So you're telling me that in the 6th century, yet again, Christian bishops were named Muhammad? Interesting stuff.
All right, so let me bring up my presentation here. All right, so let's read the passage and then I'll get into the explanation for this. So this is from Ibn Sa'd's Kitab al-Tabakat al-Kabir. And this is the passage itself. Ali ibn Muhammad informed us on the authority of Masalama ibn Al-Qama, he on the authority of Katara ibn al-Sakin al-Urani, he said, in the Banu Tamim, there was Muhammad ibn Sufyan ibn Mujashi. He was a Uskuf monk. Now, Kalam could be correct that this was a bishop, but um, I'm not entirely sure about that. I would say, off of some of the research that I've done, that I'm later going to get into, that he wasn't a bishop. He may have been Christian. I don't know. But this whole idea that he was a bishop, archbishop, that this means that like this guy was, a Christian in what we would call today Christians. I don't think so. But I'm not entirely sure on that. Only God knows best. But let's keep going. His father had been told that in Arabia there would be a prophet bearing the name Muhammad, so he had him named Muhammad. There were Muhammad al-Jushami in Banu Suwah, Muhammad al-Qusaid, al-Muhammad al-Fukaimi. They were also named in the hope of receiving prophethood. So he goes into this passage and he cherry picks one name that he believes that could be a bishop, while there's how many other one, two, three other people mentioned here with the name Muhammad, and they were named so in hope of being the prophet that was forementioned. And we don't even know if these other three were Christian. We don't know. And we don't know if Kalam even isn't correct in his, assumption that this Uskuf was a bishop. So let's pump the brakes here and let's let's actually be critical in our thinking, and let's like Kalam said, like I've said, go do your own research. Okay, don't and look at the sources. And I just think that this Kalam has made a grotesque narrative about this whole thing that I had to address it. But we're gonna keep going here. Kalamiel stops reading right when the source starts contradicting him. He cites Ibn Sa'd to show you the names, but hides the fact that Ibn Sa'd says these names were exceptions. My bad. Sorry, I have trouble reading sometimes. They were exceptions based on future expectations. By using this source, Kalam is essentially saying, I believe the part of this 9th century book that mentions the name, but I'm calling the author a liar regarding why the name was used. That isn't research. That's called cherry picking. Like I said, he's cherry picking this name because it says he was a uskuf, a monk. Don't even know if monk means bishop. I would want to see the source that he's using to make that um, conflation. But no, this isn't true. That's not true. Let's keep going. Let me see here. Yeah, we're gonna be coming up to this soon. Let's put this back.
He names 5 people in Ibn Sa'd's Tabakat, 5 different people that were named to be, who were Christians that had the.
All right, so he does mention the other 5 names. Don't know if they're Christians at all. Don't know. Don't know that at all. Don't know if that's a fact. Um, the one thing that he's using to make the one name that he's listed as a Christian is the use of the word usuf and then quotes monk, but then he's then conflating the rest of the names also mean that they're Christians. But they don't say that he was after the names. It doesn't say what their professions were. So how can you make that claim?
Dame Muhammad. Why does he have a Christian name?
He doesn't.
Question: reaping Christian name.
He's stuck on this for some reason, and I don't understand why. When we've already pointed out the inscription he used, the Sabaic inscription, is literally talking about a Jewish god, not a Christian god. It is a Jewish victory inscription, not a Christian one. So you could argue that there was the name Muhammad floating around in Arabia before the 7th century Muhammad. But that doesn't take away the fact that, according to the Islamic narrative, people knew that there was going to be a prophet named Muhammad. And the source that you are using literally on this slide says itself, they were also named in hope of receiving prophethood. So you're not negating the traditional Islamic narrative. I would actually say you're supporting it. And you're doing something that like Hebrew Israelites do. I get like a Hebrew Israelite vibe from you, but not in the sense of being a Hebrew Israelite, but you guys kind of follow the same logic that, all these people are racist and they're really hiding the true religion from everybody. And it's really because all this stuff can be traced back to solely black prophets. I don't know. Maybe that's not what you think, but that's the vibe that I get from some of the things that you say throughout this video and other videos and the narrative that you're trying to paint.
That's the questions you have to start asking. I'm keep on telling you guys, right? All this stuff that you're learning, Islam-wise, is a stolen legacy of Abyssinian Christians. And I'm loving if you guys could start learning this information and start reclaiming it.
Oh, we're learning, and I'm reclaiming it.
Here we go. Share screen.
Let's get into the
And
next
we
thing.
are going here. Here we go. So right here. Okay. I'll put down here. You don't need to actually what's the word? You don't need to make noise, man. Like, drop some comments in the comment section, because you lot, I've been talking.
Okay,
I don't need to see. Oh, shit. I don't be thinking that you're seeing the screens that I'm showing.
All right, perfect. So now we're going to get into who he believes the Muhammad in the 7th century is actually modeled after. And his name is Muhammad b. Khuza'i. All right. So who is Muhammad b. Khuza'i? Now we're going to go through this before we go through his claims, because I want to give you the actual facts before we get into the fiction. There is no specific birth date record, but his active years are tied to the reign of Abraha, which is who we mentioned earlier with the story of the elephant, the Abyssinian viceroy of Yemen. Like I said, I don't think he was the actual king, but he was in charge of Yemen, of the Christian nation of Yemen, Abyssinian. Okay, he was based in Najd, Central Arabia, and the Hijaz, Western Arabia, leading the Mutar tribes. He was appointed by Abraha, the Abyssinian Christian, to be the emir of the Mudar. His job was to bring northern tribes under Abyssinian Christian influence. He was eventually assassinated by rival tribesmen from the Kinana tribe while he was traveling. Okay, so this is the historical Muhammad bin Khuza'i. Who is Muhammad bin Khuza'i? Once again, Kalam is taking, we're going to get into Kalam's claims. I'm going to let him make all of his claims. I'm not going to even paraphrase. I'll just play his video and we'll see what he's saying and why it's wrong. So he calls Muhammad bin Khuza'i the actual apostle of Arabia, which historically belongs to a Christian missionaries, who belongs to Christian missionaries that came in the 3rd and 4th century, I believe, to Abyssinia, like Theophilus, and retroactively forcing the name Muhammad bin Khuza'i onto it. He was the servant of Abraha, a Christian, but there is zero evidence in any primary source, Christian, Islamic, Greek, that he was an archbishop or a religious leader. So another claim that he makes, Kalam makes, is that he was actually the religious leader. He was the archbishop. He was, he was a political leader. And while he was a leader, he was not a political leader. He was political. He was appointed as a political leader for somebody, not like he didn't call his own shots. He wasn't in charge in that way. He was in charge of his tribe or his province or whatever he was given. He was in charge of that. He wasn't in charge of the Christians in Abyssinia. That's not true. So an emir is a political / military governor, like I said. An archbishop is a high-ranking cleric in the church hierarchy. There is no historical mechanism in the 6th century Aksumite Abyssinian church for a North Arabian tribal chieftain to be ordained as a archbishop. And we actually know who the archbishop of this time was. And he actually mentions him later in this video. And that's why we need to make this response video to his claims. Is in the mid-6th century, during the time of Abraha, the head of the church in Yemen was Gregentios. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but trust me, it's going to come up later. The Archbishop of Tapar, or local Abyssinian bishops appointed by the Patriarch of Alexandria. So bishops are not appointed by viceroys or kings. They're appointed by the head of the churches, and especially the Patriarch of Alexandria, if we're talking about Abyssinia. The apostles of these ancient texts were missionaries who brought the gospel to the Himyarites in the 300s and 400 CE. By the time of Muhammad bin Khuza'i, which is 550 CE, the church was already long established. He wasn't an apostle. He was a political appointee. All right? That's who the historical Muhammad bin Khuza'i is. All right, so let's get into Kalam's claims with who this guy is. The stage
showing, but you're not. How do I go? Let me go page 1. No, it's in page 6 furthermore. Okay, so right here, this is what I was showing you before, and I was telling you about concerning the complexion of the Salamis and people from the Arabs who had come to him to seek his favor. Among them was Muhammad ibn Khuza'i, ibn Huzaba, etc., etc., etc. With him also his brother Kays ibn Khuza'i. Ibn Ishaq also says that Abraha reportedly crowned Muhammad and appointed him as the commander of Mudar. He ordered him to carry out propaganda, religious, among the people in order to make them perform the pilgrimage to Al-Qulis, the church he had built.
All right. So Abraha is a Christian. Okay, he has appointed Muhammad bin Khuza'i as the leader of a troop. Okay, a leader of a troop, and ordered him to carry out religious propaganda in favor of Christianity. Do you know why he was assassinated? He was assassinated because the people of Mecca didn't want Abyssinian Christian influence in the region. And after he's assassinated, because I think some scholars don't agree that he was a part of the assault that Abraha led against Mecca to get those people up there to come down to his church that he had built, which literally is being read right here. So think about this logically, okay? Muhammad bin Quzai is appointed to influence people of the Hijaz to stop going to the Kaaba and come down and start praying towards and start coming down on pilgrimage to the church that Abraha built. So he's killed because the people up there in the north are like, no, we're not doing that. All right, we have our own beliefs, and we don't want your influence up. We don't want Christian influence here. He gets killed. What does Abraha do? Abraha later sends an army with an elephant to destroy the Kaaba, which fits the Islamic narrative, and really nothing comes of it. We don't know historically what really happens. I mean, there's a story in Ibn Asakh about what happened with the birds and the stones. Historically or academically, you don't have to accept it if you don't want to. If you're a Muslim and you want to accept that on faith, that's fine. I don't really care. But this idea that this Muhammad bin Khuza'i guy is really who the model the 7th century Muhammad was built off of, and he's not even the leader of a massive amount of people, and he's appointed a leader. I don't know. Give me a break. I just.
The Munamak has a variant account. Muhammad and Kay, son of Khuza'i, were cast off by their tribe and settled in Najran. Then they joined the army, etc., etc., etc.
You know what Najran is? Najran? What we talked about earlier. What happened in Najran? Why is Muhammad listed in the Book of the Martyrs? Because the Hemorites slaughtered the Christians of Najran. And then we have Muhammad bin Khuza'i living in Najran, or going to Najran, which is a Christian settlement. I don't know.
Etc. Okay, so right here, if you want scholastic sources that talks about this particular well, he discusses this particular Muhammad of history, right? I want you guys to go off and start doing your research.
Please do. Please do. Please do. Let's see what else he says here. I'm sorry, he jumps around a lot into different topics here. I'm trying to follow it through my presentation, how I have my presentation set up. All right, yeah, so let's just go from here. So this is kind of what I was saying earlier. This is the problem with everything that he's kind of laid out here. So let's start with the inscription. Dates back to 523, the reign of the Jewish king Yusuf. The story of Muhammad bin Khuza'i and Abraha takes place decades later, around 550 to 570 CE, the year of the elephant, which correlates to the Islamic narrative, whether you believe the story about the birds or whatever, that's on you. I don't really care. The contradiction: King Yusuf, the author of the inscription, was the arch enemy of the Abyssinians. He was famous for massacring the Christians at Najran. It's historically impossible for a Jewish king who hated Abyssinians to write an inscription praising Abyssinian appointed, governor. I wouldn't even say that he was a governor. I would say he was just probably a tribal leader, because it says the tribal Mudar. He was made the Emir of tribal Mudar. And if you can imagine, if there's multiple tribes, you usually have tribal leaders, then you have leaders in charge of those tribal leaders. So he's not even like the tier above a tribal leader. He's like at the bottom. So context: King Yusuf was a Judaized Arab fighting against Abyssinian influence. And Sabaik Mahmud is an adjective title for God, the praised one. Kalam is taking a later legend about a tribal leader, Muhammad bin Khuza'i, and retroactively forcing it into an inscription written 30 years earlier by that leader's enemies. All right. So the rebuttal. According to the very source Kalam used, Ibn Asaq, the Meccans and the surrounding tribes Kinana assassinated Muhammad bin Khuza'i because they rejected Abyssinian authority. If he were a religious leader and a apostle who settled in Mecca, why does the Meccan traditions record him only as a political enemy? So, as you stated, he was a political, yeah, he was, but he was a political enemy who was killed for trying to impose Abyssinian foreign rule. Kalamiel tries to elevate a minor tribal governor, Muhammad bin Khuza'i, to the rank of archbishop and apostle of Arabia. He's blending the history of 4th century Christian missionaries with a 6th century political puppet. The sources he points to, like Theban or Sin, Sinatiic, I don't know how to pronounce that, records list the bishops of the era, and none of them are named Muhammad bin Khuza'i. Furthermore, the Christian Church of the Abyssinians was under the strict authority of the Coptic Patriarch in Alexandria, as I said before. So they weren't just doing their own thing down there. Like, as he was saying earlier, oh, why are they talking about the Byzantines? Why are they talking about when the Aksumite Empire was just as big? Well, the church there wasn't doing its own thing. It belonged to the Church of Alexandria, which was the Byzantines or the Coptics, whatever. There is no record of an Archbishop Muhammad in the Alexandrian archives. He is essentially making up a church office for a man who was nothing more than a temporary regional governor. All right, this is a little bit later. He starts talking about that. Let's get back over here.
This as well. Bear with me. Do I have it here? Yeah, there it goes. So you technically would want to go to page 34 of that particular book, of that yet again, right? And it'll have much more information, and it'll tell you all about his family, and then you can go off and do your research. These are 2 articles that I'm just going to prep you guys with. For those of you guys who are truly interested in this topic, you guys will go off and actually do your research. Otherwise, I know I'm just wasting my time, so that's why I'm not even trying to do too much. Okay, I just want to give you guys some of this stuff. So somebody over here has I will tell you that in terms of history and what we can prove, there is only one Muhammad that you can prove. And that Muhammad was, yes, 100% based in South Arabia. Yes, 100%. Okay. Now, as I've said before, the Muhammad of the Islamic narrative was based on this original Muhammad. The Quran itself, yeah, and I'm just going to show you something real quickly. The Quran, where was it found? The earliest version of the Quran. Tell me, For those of you guys who are interested in this topic, where was the earliest Quran found?
Say less. Well, let's let him finish first.
Was it found in Mecca? Nope. Was it found in Medina? Nope. Was it found in Syria, Damascus? Nope. Iraq? Iran? Nope. Do you know where it was found? It was found in South Arabia, in Yemen, in Sana'a. That's where it was found. Interesting that. Interesting. Interesting. Do you know where else it was found? Like, to re-pinpoint it. It was found in Abraha's cathedral that was later converted into a mosque.
Let's look into that. So, what is the oldest Quran that we have? It is the Birmingham Quran manuscript, and it is dated to 568 to 645 CE. And this is, I got it from Wikipedia. You can go check it out over there on Wikipedia. But here is the information that we have about this specific manuscript that we have. Its origin. It is believed to have originally come from the Mosque of Amr ibn al-As in Fustat, Old Cairo, Egypt. Scholars have matched the Birmingham leaves to similar folios held at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, which are known to have provenance from that specific mosque. The fragments were acquired in the 1920s by Alphonse Mingana, a Chaldean priest and scholar born near Mosul, modern day Iraq. Mingana's manuscript hunting trips to the Middle East were funded by Edward Cadbury of the famous chocolate family, who wanted to make Birmingham a world class center for religious and theological study. For decades, the two leaves, now cataloged as Mingana Arabic, Islamic Arabic 1572a, were misbound with another slightly younger Quranic manuscript. It wasn't until the 2015 radiocarbon dating at Oxford University that the world realized these specific pages dated back to 568 and 568 to 645 CE. Since the Birmingham leaves matched those in the National Library of France that were taken from the Mosque of Amir ibn al-As in Fustat, Egypt, it places the early physical text of the Quran in an Arab Egyptian context shortly after the Islamic conquest around 641 CE. You can point out that the scripts. So the another story about this manuscript is that somebody was reading this manuscript that these pages were bound in with the earlier dating. What was the verbiage that I used? That it was misbound with, basically, and the person said, "Whoa, this is like Hijazi Arabic. Like, this looks like Hijazi script. There's certain ways that certain regions write Arabic, and this looked like it came from the Hijaz, like from the area that Muhammad is from." And through the carbon dating and everything, they were like, "Oh my goodness, this actually is Hijazi script. It is dating back to um, the time of the Prophet or his companions, and this is the earliest manuscript you have." And unlike Kalam is stating here, like, this isn't even the smoking gun to his claim that the oldest manuscript that we have is from Yemen. The fact that it's the script of the Hijaz, the fact that it dates back to the time of the prophets or his companions, and it wasn't found in South Yemen. It was actually found in Egypt, and it corresponds to the conquest. So completely false. Everything he said was completely false. It's not true. All right, so you can point out that the script is Hijazi from the Hijaz region of Arabia. If the Quran were an Abyssinian legacy, as Kalam claims, the earliest manuscript would likely be written in Gayes, the language of the Abyssinian Church, or a script heavily influenced by the Aksumite calligraphic styles. Instead, we see a distinct, evolving Arabic script that is geographically tied to Mecca and Medina. The claim the Quran is an Abyssinian Ethiopian legacy, the physical evidence, the oldest Quran fragments in Birmingham, Sassana, were written in Arabic Hijazi script dated to mid 7th century and traced back to Egypt and Arabia. So, again, what he's saying is not true. So let's talk about let's see what he says about this manuscript before we get into it.
So you're telling me was found in the burial place of the historical Muhammad inside his cathedral in Sana'a, his capital city.
Oh, hold on. Actually, I want to go back here and just play this real quick.
So you're telling me that the earliest Quran was found in the burial place of the historical Muhammad inside his cathedral in Sana'a, his capital city.
Wow. All right. So I don't know where to start there. So he's saying, okay, so it's Ibraha's cathedral, not Muhammad bin Khuzai's cathedral, for one. So again, we're conflating a lot of things here to fit a narrative that doesn't exist. You're saying that Muhammad is the guy, but the cathedral is, we know it's Ibraha's cathedral that you're talking about. We know there was an Ibraha's cathedral. We'll get into that too later, a little bit later. So is it Muhammad bin Khuzai, or is it Abraha, or is it the inscription, or is it the woman? I'm really confused here with the logic that you're using to get to these conclusions that you're making. And so Muhammad bin Khuzai was the leader of the Mudar tribe that wasn't even in Yemen. So how was Sana'a his capital? I mean, it could have been Abraha's capital, but he's the viceroy of the real person that's in charge. So I'm just kind of lost to where you get that conclusion. I don't know.
Where he ruled from. Huh?
I don't know. That's me too.
Whoa. But
Yeah.
then what's about this later Islamic narrative, Muhammad? Like what?
Let's just keep going here.
Religious hatred. Muhammad is a false prophet. And I'll say to you, no, Muhammad wasn't a false prophet.
Okay, this is another claim he gets
Did
into.
you know that the Greek Orthodox Christians did their best to tell the story of the historical Muhammad? They've actually sainted the historical Muhammad. They've got him under a pseudonym, called Saint Gregentios. Check it out. I want you to check it out. Look, I will do it myself. Let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see if I can share my screen for you guys, so you can see what goes on. What actually goes on. Do. Let's see. Sent. All right. Right there. This particular individual, Saint Gregentius, our father among the saints.
All right. So before we get into this claim, I actually want to go back to the Sana'a Pompeset. whatever the full name is, the Sana manuscript. So Kalamio is correct about the location of the find. In 1972, workers renovating the Great Mosque of Sana, Masjid al-Kabir, found a massive cache of manuscript fragments in a paper grave between the inner and outer roofs. This is where um, the history becomes complex, and he's not telling the full story or the truth. So let me just fix the camera real quick. So I'm gonna turn. All right. So this is where history becomes complex. There is a famous historical tradition that the Great Mosque of Sana was built using, this is important here, materials Olia from Al Galis, the Cathedral of Abraha. So Kalam saying this guy, Muhammad B. Khuza'i, is the real Muhammad, the historical Muhammad, and his capital was Sana. He, the Quran really comes from him. It's written in the first manuscript we have was written in his capital, Sana, and it comes from his time period. That's what he's just laid out over the past couple clips that we've gone through in this recording. That's his view. So we're gonna break that down here. So it's really all about. So I'm not even refuting that there was a guy named Muhammad because I think there was a guy named Muhammad because I just don't think he has anything to do with the 7th century Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Um, at all. And so basically, when when the cathedral was destroyed, it wasn't converted into a mosque. Okay, there's a great tradition that the mosque was built using the materials from the cathedral. So the cathedral was most likely destroyed, and the columns from the cathedral were used to build the mosque. Not that it was just like made to look like a mosque. That wasn't the case. It was destroyed, and they found use out of the columns for the building, and they used those columns to build the new mosque that they were making. All right. So the Sana manuscript is written actually in Hijazi Arabic. So if we were expecting this to be a Quran that belonged to Muhammad B. Khuza'i in Yemen, we would want it to be in Gais, right here. We'd want it to be in Gais. We wouldn't want it to be in um, Hijazi script, because Hijazi script is from a specific place in Arabia, from the Hijaz, which is Mecca and Medina. So the fact that we have this manuscript, Sana, and it's in Hijazi manuscript, actually goes against everything that Kalam stated. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's written in Hijazi Arabic. If it were produced in the Abyssinian nation as a religious artifact in Abraha's cathedral, not Muhammad bin Qusay's cathedral, it would logically be a Giez, or I don't know how to pronounce that, or at the very least show Aksumite orthographic influence, and it doesn't. It shows Hijazi influence. Kalam claims the Senat Palimpsest, I don't know how to pronounce it, that the Sana manuscript, whatever, comes from Abraha's cathedral. He is confusing architectural materials with manuscripts. While it is true the Great Mosque was built with stones and columns taken away from Abraha's ruined cathedral, meaning not converted, ruined, new site, using building materials, the manuscript itself was written on a parchment. So the manuscript itself, the parchment that the words are written on, doesn't even date to the 6th century. It dates to the 7th century. So there's no way that it was written in the time of Muhammad bin Khuza'i. That's not true. Well after the cathedral had been stripped, furthermore, both layers of the manuscript are in Arabic, Arabic Quran, whereas the cathedral was an Abyssinian Christian site. He is trying to claim a Christian origin for a text that didn't even exist when the cathedral was in its prime. Like everything is just wrong with everything that he's saying. Let's keep going though, because he's gonna get in. He got into Gregentios. All right, yeah, here we are. We've caught up to him. So this is like actually one of the last things that I'm getting into. There's a lot more in his video that we could get into, and I will later. But this is the last thing that I have. Um, I feel like I've pretty much destroyed his argument anyway, from the inscription to the book of the Himarites to Muhammad bin Khuza'i being, the Archbishop of Yemen, or the Bishop of Yemen, and all the other claims that he makes. You can go watch his video and then watch mine, and you can make your own opinion about it. But what's funny enough is actually that he claims Muhammad bin Khuza'i was the bishop, or the religious leader of that era, and then he's gonna actually bring up the archbishop of this place of Yemen, and his name is Gregentios. He was the archbishop. He was alive during Muhammad bin Khuza'i's time, and they're not the same. They're completely different, two different people. But let's get into it. Oh wait, hold on 1 second. I think you can hear it, but you're not seeing it. Put that back up there.
It's really to do with South Arabia, right? It has all this information about him, right? All this information about him. They even tell you to please go to the Synaxarion. Does it have it here? I think it might do. Let's just see. Yeah. So it talks about him. I would say just go and research it, right? It's got this individual here. Unfortunately, yeah, you're gonna say, oh, but Gregentios, it's a different name. Yeah, Gregentios is a pseudonym. Pseudonym, meaning that's not his real name. And scholars have also made mention of it, that this is not his real name. They've just put that name there. And what they were trying to do, because obviously they're underneath Islamic rule, I am going to speculate. I'm going to say speculate. This is me speculating. They were hiding the name that they were trying to tell the story about, because it could potentially get them into trouble. Imagine that. They were telling the story. They've sainted this individual underneath Abraha, this great Christian apostle. Yeah. If you can go ahead and learn about him, this
Muhammad bin Khuza'i, who was killed, assassinated. We don't even know exactly when he was assassinated. We don't even know if he was in the battle of the Year of the Elephant, or if he was killed before that. I'm pretty sure he probably was killed before that. And that was probably the reason why Abraha sent his army up there, was to regain influence over the tribes up there. So how is Muhammad bin Khuza'i really who Gregentios is about, when, if you actually do your study into Gregentios, he's a completely different person who has a completely different story than Muhammad bin Khuza'i, and it's not even similar. These are completely two different people, and one is known by even the Pope. Like, Gregentius meets the Pope. So how did Muhammad bin Khuza'i meet the Pope? How can these be the same? How is the Greek Orthodox trying to really tell the best they can, the best in a way the best they can the story of the real historical Muhammad, when these are completely two different people and you're conflating two completely different stories. And I don't understand how we've gotten to these conclusions about this.
Great Christian apostle that was sent. He was a prophet to this area. He had a holy book, etc., etc., etc. Right?
Again, he thinks the Sanap palm set, the manuscript, is the book of Muhammad b. Khuza'i. Hold on. Let me get back here. Sorry, we're gonna boom. Let me get this back up where we were. Sorry, having some technical difficulties here.
Was a prophet to this area. He had a holy book, etc., etc., etc. Right? Learn about him.
I did. Let's get into it. Let's take this down. Let's put this up. Who is Gregentios? According to the laws of the Himarites and the life of Gregentios, his bios, he was the Archbishop of Tapar, Zafar, and Yemen. That literally tells you who this guy is. He was the Archbishop. He was made a bishop and sent to Yemen. So if he was made a bishop and sent to Yemen, why? And he's literally living during the time of Abraha. Why is Abraha making Muhammad b. Khuza'i a tribal leader, conflating that with a bishop of? This was the archbishop. This was who was religiously in charge of Yemen during that time. And he was in charge of the religious doctrines of the time. And he was a champion of the Trinity. We know that. He was a champion of the Trinity. So, the mission. He was sent by the Patriarch of Alexandria at the request of the Aksumite king Caleb to oversee the reconstruction of the Christian church in Yemen after the defeat of the Jewish king Yusuf. Okay, so from the inscription that we started this video with was by the Jewish king Yusuf after he martyred hundreds of Christians and took over the area of Najran, and that was his victory inscription. Okay. Later, the Abyssinians overthrew them. Okay, so the inscription has nothing to do with Christians. It's a Jewish inscription, and it's literally a fact that they slaughtered the Christians there. We've already named the sources in this video. We went through the sources. He uses the sources. So that's not even a question. The legality. He is most famous for the laws of the Himarites, a legal code designed to turn Yemen into a strict Byzantine state. So Kalam has said multiple times throughout this video, oh, why are they talking about the Byzantines? Why are they talking about the Assassinids? Right here. Byzantium had rule over the Axumites through the church, through the patriarchy of the church. It was a Byzantine state. It was a Christian state. So debunking the pseudonym and the sainted Muhammad claim. The invention argument. Kalam E.L. claims Gregentios is a Greek Orthodox invention to hide the historical Muhammad, which he believes is the Muhammad b. Khuza'i. Or I don't know if he believes that if it's this Greek guy. I don't know. He needs to clarify that. The bios of Gregentios and the laws of the Himarites were written in Greek And in the 9th century, he keeps on saying, I'm using 6th century sources. I'm using 6th century sources. This is a 9th century, like these are 9th century sources that talk about Gregentius. Okay. They're not 6th century sources, but they describe 6th century events. While historians like Al- Albrecht Breger argue that parts of the BIOS are legendary or literary fiction written later. The figure of Regentius represents a Byzantine church's attempt to claim authority over Yemen, not northern Arabia, Yemen. And then Ibraha uses Muhammad bin Khuza'i to then um, insert influence over northern Arabia through Abyssinian influence, and then tries to destroy the Kaaba to bring the people of Northern Arabia down to Southern Arabia to go to his church or cathedral. So the Saint Muhammad argument, Kalamia claims he suggests that the church took the historical Muhammad and renamed him Gregentius to saint him to try their best to tell the story of the real Muhammad who has this his religious book, who is given this religious book also, and that's far from the truth. The fundamental conflict, Gregentius' entire mission was the eradication of non-Christian practices in Arabia. He spent his time converting Jews and pagans to Chalcedonian Christianity. Gregentius is depicted as a champion of the Trinity. If he were a sainted Muhammad, it'd be the only instance in history where a monotheistic icon Muhammad was hidden inside a figure who spent his entire life preaching the divinity of Christ and the Trinity, concept that the Quran explicitly rejects. So this is the end of my presentation. There's a lot more that Kalam gets into regarding his claims about who the real historical Muhammad is. He believes that it's this 6th century figure, either Muhammad bin Khuza'i or Gregentius. It can't be, and those two people are not the same person. So it can't be both of them. It has to be either or. And if you look into actually let's go to Gregentius. We'll end it here just to drive this point home. Just to drive this point home, we'll end here because this is the worst claim that he has. This one here. Remove. All right, Regentius. He was purported Archbishop of Zafar, the capital kingdom of Weimar, in the mid-6th century, according to a hagiographical dossier compiled in the 10th century. This compilation is essentially legendary and fictitious, although a few parts are of historical value. Written in Greek, it survives the Slavonic translation. The three works in the dossier are conventionally known as the Bios, Life, Nomi, Laws, and Debate. Respectively, the biography of Gregentius is called the Life of Saint Gregentius. The laws he wrote for the kingdom, and debate he had with a Jew. The whole dossier sometimes acts known as the Acts of Gregentius. So it's about debates that he had with a Jew, who, as we already covered, this was the main issue that was happening down in Yemen at the time. Was down in that area, Southern Arabia, there were Jews and there were Christians, and they were fighting with each other. And sometimes the Jews would win, sometimes the Christians would win, and until the Christians took power through the Abyssinian and the Aksumite Empire, and then Jews weren't really a thing anymore. I mean, they were still like like probably had tribes throughout Arabia, but they weren't the ruling faction, which became the Axumites down in southern Arabia. Bum, 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 bum. Early life. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. As I stated with Muhammad B. Khuza'i, we don't know when he was born, but we know he was active during the time of Abraha. We don't know how old he was when he was killed. Um, we know that he was appointed by Abraha to lead the Mudar tribe and that he was assassinated. That's about it. But how are we conflating Gregentius, who was born on December 6th in the late 5th century in the town of Light? I don't want to even attempt that. In the land of Avars, his father was named Agapios, his mother Isubia. At his baptism, he was named after a sage who lived on a nearby mountain. So we know his name. He was named by a sage who lived on a nearby mountain. The schooling begins at the age of 7. At the age of 10, he was pushed into a river by a deer, miraculously saved from a drowning. He retires to the desert where he receives instructions and prophecies about his future from a holy man. So he's not making prophecies, he receives instructions and prophecies about his future from a holy man, which is obviously a Christian, because he's baptized and he was named after a sage who lived on a nearby mountain. Yada yada yada. Go read it. When his mother dies, Gregentius is placed into the custody of a married but childless priest who baptized him. So there's two things of stories about baptizing with him. During a barbarian invasion, the townspeople flee to a fortress of Corada. Gregentius, who was in the vineyards at the time, manages to sneak through the Romanius gates while the fortress is besieged. After the barbarians retreat, both Gregentius and his foster mother have prophetic dreams about him. At the urging of certain Sergios, his foster mother tells her dream to an elder named Nikitas, who interprets it as a saying that Gregentius will one day convert a foretold people. Gregentius traveled extensively in northern and central Italy and Sicily before sailing to Alexandria in Egypt. So, how is Muhammad B. Khuza'i Gregentius? Well, Muhammad B. Khuza'i is in Sicily. Muhammad B. Khuza'i is in Arabia. Gregentius is in central Italy and Sicily before sailing to Alexandria in Egypt. The bios presents him as traveling from uh, Lipiani, I don't know how to say that, blah, 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 Milan, Carthage, then by foot to Rome, then to Augustopolis, finally in Alexandria, in his order, timing, and mean to travel. So this is, he ends up in Alexandria. Through all of that, he ends up in Alexandria. From Alexandria, he's sent to Yemen to be the Archbishop of Yemen, where he champions the Trinity and converting people to Christianity, which is who interprets as the saying that Gregentius will one day be convert a foretold people. He's a Christian bishop who is sent to Yemen after the defeat of the Jewish king to convert Jews to Christians. That's who Gregentius is. That's the historical Gregentius. He is a saint according to the Greek Orthodox Church because he was a Christian bishop. Not because they're trying to hide the historical Muhammad. and I'll finish it there. I'm gonna be doing some more videos about some of the claims that a lot of these people make in presenting and trying to present historical facts in a narrative that doesn't even um, represent the scholarship that they quote. Like he keeps on saying the scholarship, the scholarship, the scholarship. The scholarship doesn't agree with you. The sources that you're using don't even agree with you. You're cherry picking things and taking them out of context to fit a narrative that you want them to fit. And I think that's not correct. And that's why I made this video. And I'll have several more videos coming because I love to dive into this type of stuff and really get into the thick of everything. But please like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned. I have some more videos coming soon. Bye bye.